Hello, welcome! Trauma-Informed SLP here, Kim Neely. How are you doing? Hey, we're promoting safety and empowerment over here! My apologies to all New Yorkers and fans of Midnight Cowboy. Hope you're doing good. I haven't been lately. My mental health has been in the pooper, but I'm happy to be here unpacking some things and hoping what I say might help some folks. But basically, on this channel, as a multiply neurodivergent person and queer person, I spend a lot of time obsessing over psychology in the effort to understand humans and their behaviors and why people do what they do and say what they say. And when I went into the hyperfixation hole of trauma-informed care, it really helped to clarify a lot of things for me and help to understand a lot more, or at least hold a lot more compassionate space for people who behave in ways that I don't agree with, essentially, quite frankly, to be honest. So on this channel, I am hoping to use my knowledge of trauma-informed care, neuroscience, psychology, my speech-language pathology training and stuff like that to promote more understanding and compassion across many different people and different perspectives so that hopefully we can all start to heal from all the pain and maybe the world can be just a slightly kinder space. That would be really nice right now, because boy, it's not very kind over here in the United States right now, and it's getting tough. Okay, anyway. So on today, I'm going to be doing a response video to a video titled FAFO, F around and find out, MAGA trauma counselor baffled when she loses clients over her politics. And I don't know Scott Johnson. I don't know who this is, but I really liked this video. So we're going to use his video as a response so I don't have to try to track down whoever this trauma counselor person is, because I didn't know. But I wanted to do a response video because I do feel like sometimes responding to these things, like I've watched other response videos for other concepts that I was learning about, like, you know, deconstructing wellness and, you know, the wellness industry and stuff like that. And it like helps to see, I think, reaction videos to see how people apply certain concepts in real time. So that's what I wanted to do here. And honestly, this Scott Johnson guy has some pretty darn good takes in my opinion. So I don't know how much I'm going to add, but let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's see how this goes. I better hit the record on this. Hey, start recording.
FAFO for Trump voters. Now this one is probably the most interesting one that I've ever done for a myriad of reasons. This is a trauma counselor who lectures and informs people on how to self-regulate their trauma.
See how I wanted to respond to this one right here? Someone who, I think she's actually, it says on her, the little bit that he hasn't edited out, you can see it says a teacher and a coach. And like, I think not a therapist. So I don't know if she's really a counselor, but she's like a trauma coach, I guess.
I have a confession that I don't want to make. My ego does not want me to share this with the world. And I know a lot of you follow me because you love the way that I have helped you regulate. You love the way that I have taught you about trauma. You have really enjoyed learning from me. And my genuine hope is that after I say this, that you still like me. I hope you still like me. I hope you still...
I feel like that's always a red flag when someone wants to be liked after they say something. So you're going to say something that's unpopular or that might hurt people and you still want to be liked. I actually, you know, when I really unpack that, like that's the first thing she said that I was like, ooh, red flag to me, because listen, you're already setting the expectation. You have an expectation for how people are going to emotionally respond to this. You've already set that. It's kind of manipulative, really, to be like, I hope you still like me. I hope you forgive me. I hope we're still friends. It's like, wait a second. What are you about to do? It makes me feel really uncomfortable. What are you about to say? You know what I mean? Don't try to predict how I'm going to react to it. Let me react the way I react, you know? People have a right to their own emotional reactions. That is, emotions be valid.
I hope you still think well of me the way you did. So I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I voted for Trump. And yes, I am a multiracial owner of a trauma institute, mom of a non-binary kiddo, and somebody who works in like the social justice, social work spaces, helping people with trauma recovery and nervous system regulation. And so some of you, your flabbers are gasted right now.
Flabbergasted? No. I'm just shaking my head at the absolute disconnect between your supposed morals and teachings as a trauma recovery coach and what you tend to support politically.
And talking about how I was really struggling to choose who I was going to vote for. And I got absolutely ripped apart. Like, absolutely just got my hindquarters handed to me by people who told me that who wanted to remind me that I was Black and I was a woman and I was a nurse and I was somebody in these, social wellness spaces. And so how could I even think about voting any other way than one way? I got called an Uncle Tom. I got called names that I cannot repeat on here. I was just dragged for sharing that I was struggling to choose between what felt like a rock and a hard place. And the thing that made it not feel similar, the thing that kind of really pushed me over into one camp, was actually the very values and the very things that we teach at our trauma institute. I was listening to people tell me who were saying that they were tolerant and kind and compassionate and cared about humanity and really cared about the wellness of all people. I was listening to them say things and call people names and do things for the sake of justice and the sake of tolerance that were so out of alignment with those values.
Okay, from a trauma-informed perspective, trauma-informed care, in a nutshell, could be summed up as the act of asking what happened to these people versus, what's wrong with them, okay? So these very tolerant, compassionate people are saying these things that sounds like they're making generalizations about people that made you uncomfortable. What happened to them that led to them having that opinion? I'll wait a second. Go ahead and calm yourself and regulate and figure out from an objective standpoint what happened to people that led them to think this is an atrocious choice you're making. Because that's actually what you should be asking. If you're actually trauma informed and you're a trauma coach or counselor or whatever the heck you are, what happened to people? What happened to our society that led to this? Why were certain people who seem to be inclusive and compassionate and want to include everybody in the world having a real visceral reaction with what was being said on the side of the people that you voted into power? What were they saying they were gonna do? Listen, I've been seeing a lot of things come at me from my algorithm anyway on YouTube, on my personal YouTube, where people are doing this F around and find out the leopards are actually eating my face thing and reactions. And I understand there are people out there having genuinely traumatic, awful things happen to them and being deported and having family members deported and absolute atrocities happening. And people go on social media and they want compassion and empathy for the pain that they're experiencing, and they're not getting it. And I get that that is hard, but listen. No one owes you compassion. You are not owed sympathy or compassion. That it can be given by people who have a lot of grace and a lot of, quite frankly, a lot of healing and a lot of emotional maturity and awareness. They maybe can offer the empathy and compassion. But people in general, the general public, they don't actually owe anybody that when somebody made a choice that led to something. If you try to warn somebody that there's danger and they keep on going, what are you going to do? If you try to say hey, if you keep stepping that way, you're going to fall off the cliff, and they keep stepping that way and you're too far away that you can't catch them and drag them back. Maybe you're too far away, right? Whatever. And you say don't step forward, you're going to fall. And then they do it anyway. There's going to be mixed emotions about that. People are going to have mixed emotions about that. People are going to have some strong emotions about that, and they are right to have those emotions. Okay? That's just how that goes. I think people are looking to the internet for a lot of genuine connection and safety, and it's that's not where you go for it. The internet is a public space. This is you going to the town square. You're going to go to Times Square in New York City and shout, "Somebody have compassion for me." It's you never would do that before the internet, so why are you doing that now on the internet? You know what I mean?
Tolerating intolerance itself undermines the whole idea behind tolerance. I shouldn't have to say it, but Donald Trump is not at all tolerant of people who are different from him. LGBTQ people. He campaigns on trying to strip trans people away from their rights to their body, women, people with the capacity for pregnancy, or demonizes, cannot even tolerate undocumented people who are striving to come into the US for a better life. We are not tolerating intolerance. It undermines the whole idea. It's giving, and this is a personal example of mine, when I first came out, I told my mom that I was really just being open-minded about my sexuality, and she then said, Scott, are you being open-minded enough to ask yourself if you're straight? Like, talk about the paradox of open-mindedness. Point number 2. A lot of this seems like it's motivated by personal grievance.
Yeah, I mean, for reals. It is like, first off, personal grievance, feeling perhaps personally attacked, perhaps. Even if it wasn't actually a direct personal attack, but people were expressing an opinion, and she identified with the people they were expressing the opinion about. So she felt attacked, right? So there's that personal grievance aspect for sure. But like, yeah, listen. No one has to be tolerant of Nazis, okay? No one has to be tolerant of anyone calling for genocide. Ever. Period. Full stop. Trauma can be an explanation, but it sure isn't an excuse to call for people's genocide, for taking away rights, for deporting people, for splitting up families. Project 2025 was out there. People thought it wasn't going to actually happen, though. They thought what they said wasn't what was actually going to happen. And I don't know. Maybe it's privilege and like generational amnesia and like just general privileges of like, if you're in a well-off enough area, you weren't thinking these actual atrocities might actually happen. But listen, in World War II, when the United States put Japanese people in internment camps, okay? When that happened, when we were deporting Mexican Americans from the LA area also around similar times and splitting up families, literally raiding houses and just deporting them post haste, a lot of white people didn't know that stuff was happening. A lot of white people were like, oh, it's never happened here. How many times did I hear that growing up? We've never done any sort of concentration camp / internment camp things. Yeah, we did. Because people thought it wasn't gonna happen. And then it did. And so what people were intolerant of was history repeating itself and watching people they care about being harmed. That was the problem. Empathetic people not wanting to see the pain is what happened. And not even to mention people who were genuinely afraid of their own safety and their own families. There was that as well. But basically, people didn't believe the warnings. They didn't believe that there actually was a threat to people's way of life. People made some big decisions on some very micro level things. And then they found out, wait a second, actually, that was the wrong decision. And now they want everyone to catch them as they fall off the cliff. And it's like, we can't catch you as you fall off the cliff. That's why we were trying to warn you before you fell. We can't catch you. We don't have that power. That's the problem. The power is the problem. Who has the power is the issue right now. And that was what we were trying to not have happen.
It's very self-righteous, isn't it? I mean, instead of adhering to people's feedback, you double down on your emotions instead of critically thinking about what they have to say.
100%. Okay, if somebody wants to say they're trauma informed and yet they want to police other people's emotions, you're not trauma informed. Once again, why are people reacting that way? What happened to them that made them react that way? That is the question. What happened to you that made you react this way to put out this video? I would assume, obviously, you're hurt. You don't want to think of yourself as a bad person. Maybe you have difficulty admitting you were wrong. Maybe you're having difficulty processing through feelings of guilt or shame. But guess what? You need to process the guilt and the shame. Because you need to allow those emotions to transform your beliefs and your values so that you make better decisions in the future. You need to change your behaviors. You need to change whatever perception led to those behaviors. That's what needs to happen in order for people to think you're safe again.
The humans that I am hearing tell me that they are the most scared and they are terrified and they are so angry and so upset, and that I am holding space for. I am creating and helping like foster regulation in these humans after the election. I am supporting them. They are leaning on me to become more regulated. They are coming to me to help them recover from what feels like a very traumatic experience, and I am helping them and they are grateful for it. They are actively able to self-express. They are able to tell me, they are able to talk about in the world, in public, how scared they are and how worried they are and how angry they are and how dysregulated they are. And I am sitting here knowing that if I choose to even share where I'm coming from, I'm going to get canceled.
Okay. All right. Listen. Speech pathologist hat going on here. You are a professional. People came to you for services. People come to you as a trauma-informed, whether it be a coach or whatever. They're coming to you for probably some validation, some normalization of what they're going through. They are coming to you, yes, for perhaps regulation help, perhaps, but they are treating you more akin to a counselor or perhaps a therapist, even if you're not officially a therapist. They're coming to you for a reason. You are providing services to those people. That is your job. You are a professional in that setting. It is not your job to ask and or demand compassion from the people coming to you for help. Okay? Say you go to a doctor because you have something wrong. Maybe you have like a little spot on your skin or something. And you go to a dermatologist and you're expecting like a thing. Do you want that dermatologist to then end that appointment with telling you about their spot on their skin and wanting to get your input and or compassion for their issue? Is that what you expect? I highly doubt it. They are coming to you and expressing anger and frustration and fear. Hello, red flag for trauma right there. Feelings of vulnerability and helplessness are the main things that lead to trauma responses. It's in the tip 57, which you should know about if you actually are trauma informed, because that thing 2014, it outlines a lot about being trauma informed. So like they are coming to you and they're expressing these things because you are the person offering services. That means they can come to you and express difficult things they are dealing with, and they are seeking help in coping with those difficulties. That is your job. If you want compassion for your choices, you need to find your own therapist. You need to be going to your own therapist, your own coach. This shouldn't have come to the internet, quite frankly. This is not the place. You don't go to your parasocial followers and demand validity or normalization from them. This isn't the place for that. If you have trouble with the choice you made and you are having difficulties with your emotions around that choice, you seek your own help. That is the actual answer for that. You seek your own therapist, your own private, safe space where you can unpack and deprogram and process all that's happening. Also, total side note, you're overgeneralizing the word regulation. People feeling angry, people feeling afraid, people feeling upset, those are emotions that are completely valid, and you can have upsetting emotions. Regulation doesn't mean you're calm. Regulation means your sympathetic system and your parasympathetic system are able to balance each other. It means you're able to enter a period of rest and digest after having a period of excited and or upsetting emotions or energy level essentially in the body, okay? That's what regulation technically means. I know we use it wrong all the time, but if someone's having justified anger at something, that doesn't inherently mean they're dysregulated. Anger can be very much justified. Anger doesn't have to come from trauma. Anger can come from just being mad. Anger can come from feeling like there is something here that is wrong. A boundary has been crossed and people are upset about that. That is fair. That is completely justified. Okay. And if they're coming to you to process through that anger, first off, I would hope you would point them more toward an actual mental health counselor / therapist who's licensed to do that, because that seems to be more of the space they need if they really are struggling with that. But let's say it's like a support group or something you're leading, whatever it may be. That anger might not be from trauma. Okay. That anger could just be justified anger.
I'm going to lose psychological safety.
You've already lost psychological safety. You already said that. You started out this video saying you don't feel safe sharing these thoughts with people. And if you don't feel safe sharing these thoughts with people, maybe don't share them publicly. You don't actually have to share them, to be honest. To be fair, you could have even done this as like a third person narrative of like, I'm seeing a lot of people online talk about, people who voted one way who are now struggling and they are asking for compassion and people are struggling to give them compassion. And it could have been a trauma-informed lesson on how to like grieve and process your upsetting emotions while still holding space for people. That would have been trauma-informed. This is not what you're doing. Your clients don't have to provide you psychological safety. That is not their place. They are your clients. You are the professional. You are there to provide safety to them. If you want psychological safety, go find your own therapist. Do your work there.
Trusted me and who cared about me as a person until they find out this thing.
Yes. Yes, because they're going to find out that you are not a safe person. Because, listen, the personal is political, and the political is personal.
Yes. Yes. Snaps to that. You're not a safe person. The clients, the people who trusted you to be safe, don't feel safe. They don't feel safe expressing anger with you anymore, which, hey, the whole point of being trauma-informed is you've got to be able to calm yourself to be the person who will help that person calm down, right? You've got to remain calm. You got to do the co-regulation stuff to remain calm. But the whole point is for them to feel safe expressing emotions that they otherwise would not feel safe expressing. They are not going to a public space and shouting in like Times Square for someone to give them a hug because they're angry and somebody listen to how angry they are. That's not what they're doing. They're coming to you. They're coming to what should be a safe space because professionally that should be what you're supplying, you're providing for them. That's why they're coming. And then you do this. So yeah, they feel betrayed. And now they have feelings of betrayal. They're on top of the anger and the fear they were already feeling. Now they feel like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know if this person ever really believed anything I said. Like how much of it was true, how much of it was a lie. Like that is a valid thing. They have to grieve the loss of that safe space. They have to grieve the loss of that relationship that they thought was safe with you. That's fair too. I believe you pronounce it Rice Center if you're pronouncing the acronym, but RYSE Center in 2017, they put out a really great quote that says, if it's not racially just, it's not trauma informed. And you could generalize that quote to everything, okay? On my website, I have a quote from Resma Minicum, which is the trauma decontextualized in a person looks like a personality, trauma decontextualized in a family looks like family traits, and trauma decontextualized in a people looks like culture, right? And I like that quote because it takes it from the individual level, how individual interpersonal traumas affect a person, affect the generations in a family, and also affect an entire society. That is what it means by, yes, politics are personal. Personal things are political. Yes, this has gotten very personal with people, but because we've gotten to such a divide that people don't mind rhetoric, they excuse genocidal rhetoric and constant dehumanization and targeting of groups. As long as you're not part of that group, you don't seem to mind it. It's like, that's a real freaking problem when we're on a march toward genocide, when you have one party openly declaring things that are clear stages to genocide and other people going like, don't take that too seriously. It'll be fine. You're about to walk off the cliff, but don't worry about it. Somebody will catch you down there. It'll be fine. You can't make that promise. You don't have the power to make that promise. So fear is justified, okay? You cannot be trauma-informed if you do not start to unpack the systemic oppression and the impacts that the helplessness, the vulnerability and helplessness that has been felt across many marginalized groups in this country. If you can't unpack it, if you can't face it, you can't actually be trauma-informed. Generational traumas, historical traumas, systemic traumas, environmental traumas, this stuff freaking matters. And having a party that is openly wanting to oppress the heck out of people with a literal outlined plan that they published, Project 2025, they said right away, you guys are all going to be marched off a cliff. And those of us who were like, we don't want to be marched off the cliff, we got pretty freaking scared, because if people made the wrong choice, if people didn't heed that warning, we end up where we are now. When are we going to be thrown into camps? We don't know. You know what I mean? We know we don't have the power to save ourselves from being pushed off a cliff if everybody else is going with us. Okay. And so like the whole point is we need to be in this together as a group. But now we don't know if we can trust you to actually help us from being pushed off the cliff. Or are you going to push us off in the hopes that it saves you? You know what I mean? That's what people don't know. If you think trauma is literally just interpersonal, how you treat people when they're right in front of your face, you're not trauma informed. And please stop saying you are, because you're just not. Okay? You have a lot more learning to do, a lot more healing to do, and a lot more unpacking to do.
Musk does, firing people, leads to their personal grievances, their personal traumas. And these comments were spot on. Making yourself the victim in this is a wild take. Wow, trauma teacher directly causing trauma. As a queer person who is scared right now, your choice to vote for him is actively a vote against my safety and the safety of their non-binary kiddo.
Ding, exactly. Actions have consequences. Sometimes those consequences mean we are the villain in other people's story, okay? And listen, in my unhealed, mentally very unwell state in my 20s, was I a perfect angel and or compassionate toward others? No. Am I the villain in somebody's story out there? Oh, I guarantee I am. Yeah. Uh-huh. Would I recognize the me that did that? I would know why I did it, but I would probably really flinch if I had a time machine and actually had to see myself being as mean as I was. I don't think I would like that. I had to heal from that. I had to unpack it. I had to learn, you know? I grew up in the South as a white kid. I didn't know any of this like systemic oppression stuff. This was not stuff that I knew very much about. I grew up very firmly in the if you can be friends with a black person, it means you're not racist kind of vibe, you know? And like, look, I know better now because I learn. And because I can like process through the guilt I can feel. I still do feel. But the guilt is a really keen reminder that I have more to learn and that I need to keep, it's good that I allow that to change me. The guilt is a warning to me. Guilt is like a sign that there's something I need to learn and there's something I need to change. And the whole point of healing from trauma, in my opinion, is to be able to calm yourself enough through the feeling of a threat, through the like, that guilt that feels like a really uncomfortable bad emotion. Sometimes our brain can interpret that itself as a threat. And it's like, no, guilt isn't a threat. Listen, I grew up in a household where guilt was like a dirty word. Never feel guilty for anything you ever do was kind of the message I got from people. And like, that's pretty bad, actually. It didn't sit very well with me when I heard it as a kid, and it definitely doesn't sit well with me now as an adult. But one of the quotes I encountered as like a teenager that really helped to like form my opinion of like, or really helped to like open my eyes to like guilt might not actually be a bad thing, is actually from Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, when Mr. Bennet, the dad, when he's thinking about his own guilt around Lydia and Wickham and how she ran off with Wickham and Elizabeth Bennet, you know, the lead, Lizzie, tries to make him feel better a little bit. And then he says,
I'm heartily ashamed of myself, Lizzie. But don't despair. It'll pass. And no doubt more quickly than it should.
That quote really helped me to understand how much we need to allow ourselves to sit with that kind of shame and that kind of guilt, you know? Yeah, he's a fictional character, but the idea of somebody sitting there and actually feeling ashamed for what they've done and what they've said and what they thought, it's like, and their actions, or really inactions, really, is what he's mostly ashamed of. That really opened my eyes when I was younger as like oh, wait a second, actually guilt might not be a bad thing. And the truth is guilt can be very transformative if we are able to process through it. And if we're able to actually like digest all the stuff that comes up with that. All the reasons why we did what we did, the actual impact of what we did and said, and then also like the unlearning that needs to happen, replacing that erroneous thing with something a lot more functional, compassionate, healing toward others, respectful, et cetera, right? And I think that's what's happening with a lot of this like F around and find out things is that like people are immediately wanting to go toward, I want compassion and empathy. And it's like, you're jumping over, like, you need to accept the consequences of your actions. Nobody seems to start these videos with the, I was wrong and I feel horrible about myself as a person. Because it's not about being a good or a bad person. Like, our status as good or bad people are not like fixed in stone. It's really about the behaviors you do. And the behaviors come from your values and your beliefs. And if you need to shift those, then you have to put in the work to shift those. And if you need to heal from some trauma or some sort of harm in the past, or if you need better mental health treatment for some sort of condition or something, then you need to seek that. If you want to behave in a more inclusive, compassionate way, you know?
And this gets to point number 3. She chose to talk about this on social media. She chose to open up this as a discussion, as a conversation. As you were seeing, the comments were not particularly amicable toward what she was feeling. She was feeling the pressure. She was hearing the feedback. She couldn't run away from it. But then she does in this next video.
I am changing my mind. So I just had this really tough conversation, beautiful conversation with my husband, who's also our chief ops officer. And we were just talking through if it made sense for me to really go through all of my reasoning for voting the way that I did. And we decided, no. We played out all of these different scenarios. We actually sat there for 45 minutes, like going through and thinking about how we would want to teach about this, what we would want to do, what we would want to say.
You wanted to go through this to know what to teach about it? The question never came into your mind, what I need to learn about it? That we need to go through our reasoning and think, what can we learn? What can I as a person learn from this? If you're able to regulate so darn well, why can't you learn? You should have full access to your prefrontal cortex. You should have full access to being able to be objective and reason through things in a calm, rational way. You should have been able to sit and reason through and process through the emotions that came up. And listen, I don't condone any kind of harassment online. Nobody should be harassing anybody online. But some of these comments actually made incredibly valid points. Some of these genuinely came from a place of people trying to teach you something. They were trying to teach you. So you sat here and you thought about, I should respond to this as a teacher? You're probably right. You probably shouldn't have responded. That is probably correct.
General, what research should we have? What receipts should we have? And over the last couple of days, I've gotten some comments from some people that initially I just wrote off, and not like wrote off, but I was like, well, yeah, I get where they're coming from this place of concern. But like, they were saying, you don't have to justify or explain yourself to anyone. And I was like, but this is my job. It's my job to teach people about trauma. It's my job to teach people about nervous system regulation. It's my job to teach people about recovery.
If that is truly your job, why are you making it other people's job to forgive you?
And then I remembered y'all aren't paying me.
Okay, whoa. First off, you actively ran away from a video explaining your choices. What I'm hearing is that your cognitive dissonance got in the way of explaining why you did what you did and why you are feeling the kind of shame or guilt or feelings behind it to justify, and you instead decided to run away from accountability. As this person pointed out, yes, you should share why. You opened up this conversation. So let me guess, you tried to gather your research and data and didn't want to present it because it didn't support your hypothesis and reasoning. It's your business until you make a video that's message is, I did this. I hope you still like me. It gets to it. Having to convince yourself you made the best decision you could tells me that you know it wasn't the best choice. And what we're seeing here is an act of cognitive dissonance, which is when individuals experience discomfort when their beliefs or values clash with their actions based on new information. It can also lead to motivated reasoning, which is where you come to a conclusion that is convenient for you. It's convenient for her to double down on not having to justify why she made that choice so that she doesn't relitigate or confront that difficult information.
Which is kind of funny when someone says they are there to help people regulate. So you can't calm yourself enough to digest your own cognitive dissonance. You can't sit with your shame and or guilt and like work through that and allow space for that emotion. And you're a trauma what? What is it you do again? Because what I'm hearing is you don't practice what you preach.
She only engaged with the people that attempted to validate how she was feeling. She didn't entertain or listen or adhere to any feedback whatsoever of anyone else. And lastly, this alludes to point number 5, where she was seeking out validation, people to confirm how she was already feeling. And instead, she was met with resistance, which is why she doubled down on not releasing that video and not explaining to us, even though she opened up the discussion of why she chose not to talk about why she voted for Trump.
All right. This is where he like says you're free to duet this, which thanks, Scott. I don't know you, but thank you, because I am doing that. I guess duetting, sort of. One of the things about doing trauma-informed stuff is, especially if you are coaching people who've gone through traumas and stuff, is the fact that you're opening yourself up to developing a secondary trauma, which maybe that's what happened with her. Maybe over time, she's become a much more binary thinker, much more this is right, this is wrong. And, you know, that can be a sign of like a traumatic response in someone's brain, a sign that their sympathetic system, the fight, flight, freeze system is overactivated and the rest and digest system can't really balance it out as well. And so, you know, maybe her values, her beliefs have been creeping toward a certain direction because perhaps it's been the trauma exposure that's been affecting her. It very well could be. This is me opening up, you know, I'm opening up the door to a little bit of compassion here. But once again, in a professional setting, you need to find your own person to help heal from that. You need to be going to your own therapist. You need to be vigilant against that. You need to have some check-in and some ability to check on your own mental health and to be able to do the work and do the emotional processing that needs to happen so that you can remain as compassionate as you possibly can be, and so that you don't get in these situations where one person's values or beliefs are seen as an attack on yours, okay? If this is the kind of work you want to do, you've got to be vigilant against developing a trauma response yourself. There are a lot of people out there who work in trauma who do not practice what they preach. They're like Vanderkult, quite frankly, Body Keep Score, definitely had some allegations of some harassment and stuff against him, you know? He was not practicing what he preached at all. And it's very common for people who work with trauma to develop a trauma response themselves, and that can change their viewpoints of the world. They can start to feel more hopeless, they can start to feel more helpless, and they might start to feel like people's lot in life is their fault. They might take a more individualistic stance on things and things like that. And maybe that's happening here. But once again, you're not trauma informed anymore if that's the way you're seeing it, you know? You're not trauma informed. And unfortunately, because she's had this training in trauma, what she's doing is weaponizing things like regulation and stuff. She's still thinking of herself as like the teacher to the point where she expects, you know, she wants everyone to stay calm with her, right? And it's like, you just gave a job to everybody else, the people who aren't paying you, and you're expecting them to respond a certain way. And that's pretty manipulative, quite frankly. And once again, this shouldn't have been public. Shouldn't have been public. And whether or not you explain your rationale, that's one thing. You know, if you didn't want to explain it, maybe one way to go would be, you know what? I have some things I need to process through in this situation. I'm going to take a break from social media. And if I do come back on, you know, hopefully then I can actually like explain some of where I was at the time when I voted the way I voted. But right now I'm too upset by this and I clearly have some things I need to unpack. So I'm going to go seek out my own therapy and do my own healing. And, you know, if people are still here when I come back, I can revisit it with you all, but this is what I need. Like, that would have been fair. People would still be angry. Wouldn't save you from any, unfortunately, no harassment, because this is the internet. This is how it goes, unfortunately. But it's not going to save you from anyone's anger or upset, and you might still lose clientele. In fact, you likely still would. But like, that still at least would have been a more appropriate professional response. You know what I mean? But that's what I could think, is she likely has her own traumas. And maybe she has developed additional trauma exposure, which is like basically having a trauma response due to listening and hearing about everybody else's traumas. And maybe that's led to a certain shift of worldview. And it's led to kind of a loss of some level of critical thinking, perhaps. And it's led to this like more binary good people versus bad people, or right people versus wrong people, or tolerant people versus intolerant people, you know, tolerant versus intolerant. I think I said that right. Hopefully I did. That might be where she's at with this. And it's like, that's a sign that you need to go seek your own help. Don't bring it to the internet. Definitely don't bring it to your clients. Don't take it to the people who are coming to you for a service. That's called boundaries, you know? And you basically just blew up the boundaries. You just went poof to all the boundaries. And it's like, yeah, I wouldn't feel very safe with you either, regardless of my worldview, because you just came online and like blew up your professional boundaries. So now I'm thinking, I don't even know if this person would keep my stuff secret. You know? But that I'm gonna be honest. You seem like not that trustworthy of a professional right now. So maybe it's the time for you to step back from your institute. Maybe it's time to take a little break, take a little sabbatical, and do your own thing and try to heal up a bit or something, because yeah, that was not it. So anyway, that is what I wanted to say about that. I probably got a little more heated than I should. And obviously I feel like this Scott Johnson guy definitely said, I believe guy, I think he goes by him. It seems. But anyway, I think in the About Me section, it was like gay man something something. So I think him is the appropriate thing there, possibly. But Scott, if I'm wrong, let me know. That's fine. But yeah, that was sort of my take on that. People can be trained in all kinds of things, and it doesn't always mean that they're practicing what they preach or what they've learned. And trauma really can do a number on people, whether they're the one teaching or helping or not. Yeah, hopefully this helps. If you have any other thoughts, share them in the comment below, or just give me a little like or whatever, a little thumbs up or whatevs. And here on this here channel, since weird has been an insult people have used with me for eons, I am reclaiming the word weird, using it in an affectionate way, and in the spirit of using our weirdness to connect each other, to use our weird powers for good, for connection, for understanding. I wish you all to keep it weird and take care of yourselves, do what you need to do. And until next time, guys, bye. Outro. That's not the outro. I don't know. I can't think of it right now.